Well, today, Jeff, we're talking about harvesting on the Sabbath. I didn't really know how, a funny way to introduce that because we've been talking about the Sabbath.
Yeah.
We've been talking about Jesus' claims.
Yeah.
And today he's going to just lay it down.
Harvesting on the Sabbath. Have you ever harvested?
I've picked my own strawberries.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Well, that's it. Harvesting on the Sabbath. So he's Chris and I'm Jeff and we're the Bible guys. Yeah, I spent half of my summers and all of my falls helping harvest growing up. So for like 15 years.
I went to Kroger and I purchased that which you picked, probably.
Yeah. No, we ate most of what we did. We had our garden was an acre.
Wow.
A full acre garden. And that's what we lived on through the winter. We'd freeze and can most of it. And then whatever was left over, we'd sell on the side of the road. So if you ever drove by our house on Elba Road in Lapeer County, Michigan, we would sell you our corn or our strawberries. We had tons of strawberries, pumpkins, all that stuff.
I've gone to an orchard and I've picked my own apples.
Oh, there you go.
And that was such a treat.
Yeah.
Ooh, look at us picking apples.
Yeah.
Strawberries. I think I've done blueberries. That's about it for me.
We did
Just
cucumbers and carrots and onions and okra and green beans and peas and potatoes and just going down the line. All the stuff that you need in your cellar.
My wife is getting ready for work.
Yeah.
She's putting on her makeup while you're saying this, and she's thinking, "I want a garden." So thank you, thank you, Jeff.
That's one of my goals, to make you work more.
Yeah,
give you more work.
So Liz would say, "I want this whole section in the back.
Let's plow our whole backyard."
Yeah. And she's thinking it. She thought it. She's mad at me. Right now.
Liz, I agree 100%. You do.
Love you, honey.
You want one of those.
Stop
it.
Liz. Stop it.
Okay. So today, we're doing a draft. I like the drafts.
Yeah, we're drafting ice cream flavors.
Important things.
Yeah, important things. Well, we've never done this before.
I don't think so.
So let's do rock, paper, scissors.
Ready?
1, 2, 3, shoot.
Ooh. He did paper. I did scissors. So it's rare. It's rare that I beat you on rock, paper, scissors. Yeah. So that was good. Okay, so I get to do first. My very favorite ice cream is Moose Tracks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, you're a chocolate lover.
Oh, I love it.
That makes sense.
Love it.
I don't like chocolate that much.
And I love the kind of Moose Tracks that has like the veins of chocolate, like it has the slivers of chocolate.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
I love it.
When you said veins.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. That's a weird word. I do like Moose Tracks.
Veins, like veins of gold.
I know. Yeah.
You lived with a nurse forever.
That's true.
Your wife, by the way, not just some nurse. should cover that. Just to be clear.
Some random
all these comments. Chris lives with a nurse? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. So my number one favorite is butter pecan.
Really? Butter pecan?
So check this out.
That's my dad's favorite.
So check this out.
How old are you?
I know, right?
Yeah.
But listen to this. So we have a thing in Youngstown, Ohio, where I grew up. It's called Handel's, and it's like world famous. And so my
world famous in Youngstown.
No, not at all.
Oh,
so they just put out the Times put out the top 100 flavors in the world, including Italy's gelato.
Wow!
The top 100 flavors in the world, and toward the top was Handel's in Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
Just the flavor butter pecan.
Really? So
yes.
Butter pecan is it?
In the top of the world.
In the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy.
Well, that's it. It's definitive. Well, then why are we even voting on the rest of these? You just picked one of the best ice creams in the world.
Well, that's one of my favorites.
Okay. Let me see. My next one would be Rocky Road.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I love Rocky Road.
Yeah. It's just another chocolate mosh posh.
If I could bathe in Rocky Road, I would.
That is a great visual I could have done without.
Just wallow around in it.
Yeah. Okay, let's change the visual to I like black cherry ice cream.
Oh yeah. That's good.
Yeah, it's that pink ice cream and it has like the huge bits of cherries in it.
Yeah.
And by the way, none is better than up in Traverse City. So if you're up in Traverse City, they're famous for cherries.
Yes, right.
And then you go to pretty much like any one of the what's the moo? It's called moo something.
I don't know.
Our listeners know it. But anyway,
our listeners from Michigan.
Our listeners from Michigan know it. Yeah. Anyway,
our listeners in India have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Correct.
Or Ireland. They're like, what is he talking about?
Anyway, Traverse City is known for cherries, and it's wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay.
Number 3.
Let me see. So my next one would be, I don't even. a really good vanilla bean.
Oh, I like vanilla
Like
bean
it has
a
to be
lot.
it has to be a high quality vanilla bean, but
Yeah.
I love it because it's the best base for like if you have a good hot chocolate chip cookie
Yeah.
or
yeah,
a
yeah.
nice hot brownie. You get that good vanilla bean.
Yeah.
So good.
So I think my third favorite is going to be, and it actually might be my second favorite, but they might be interchangeable. But I'm going to go with Oreo.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Oreo, like an Oreo based.
Yeah, like Oreo flavored ice cream,
yeah.
which is pretty much everywhere now.
Sure.
It wasn't when it first came out,
Right.
but it's almost everywhere, and I just absolutely love it.
Okay. So hey, you want to just shut the podcast down and go get some ice cream?
No doubt.
Thank you for joining us today.
And let's pray, and we're done. That's funny.
Okay. Well, hey, so what have we been talking about lately? We've been talking a lot about the Sabbath.
Yes.
Yes, and
Well, there's a lot that's connected here. So
we've referenced this passage every time we've talked about the Sabbath, so
Yes.
we should just get to it maybe
yes,
and read it.
And by the way, this passage is found in the Harmony of the Gospels.
Yeah.
In Matthew 12, Mark 2, and Luke 6.
Yeah.
So we're going to read all three of those, and they're pretty short.
Yeah, they're not very long.
But they're really the same event recorded in three different Gospels.
So the cool thing about it is looking for different details in the three different
Right.
tellings of it, right? So
Yep.
while it's telling the same story, there's different details, and it really helps bring the story alive. So Matthew 12, verse 1 says, "At about that time, Jesus was walking through some grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, so they began breaking off some heads of grain and eating them. But some Pharisees saw them do it and protested. 'Look, your disciples are breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath.' And Jesus said to them, 'Haven't you read the scriptures, what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God, and he and his companions broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. And haven't you read in the law of Moses that the priests on duty in the temple may work on the Sabbath? I tell you, there is one who is even greater than the temple. But you would not have condemned my innocent disciples if you knew the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath.' Then in Mark 2, it says, 'One Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples began breaking off heads of grain to eat. But the Pharisees said to Jesus, "Look, why are they breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?" And Jesus said to them, "Haven't you ever read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God during the days when Abiathar was high priest and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests are allowed to eat. He also gave some to his companions." Then Jesus said to them, "The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath." And then in Luke chapter 6, it says, "One Sabbath day, as Jesus was walking through some grain fields, his disciples broke off heads of grain, rubbed off the husks in their hands, and ate the grain. But Pharisees said, 'Why are you breaking the law by harvesting grain on the Sabbath?' Jesus replied, 'Haven't you read in the scriptures what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He went into the house of God and broke the law by eating the sacred loaves of bread that only the priests can eat. He also gave some to his companions.' And Jesus added, 'The Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath.'" So it's interesting how Mark gives the little detail that it was during the days of Abiathar, right?
Right.
He mentions that. Luke says that they picked off the grains and they rubbed them in their hands, got the husks off, ate the seeds. It just kind of makes it a little bit more precise in time, and then also a little bit more human in the interaction, right? So it's neat to read how they all cover different elements.
And then Mark included the most detail because he also said that Jesus, it was the only gospel where it was recorded where Jesus made the comment that we referred to.
Yeah.
Which is the Sabbath is made to meet, made for the people. The people aren't made for the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things where, Jesus is making a claim for you and me. We were like, oh, okay, that sounds right. But back then, that's a huge deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. So this is one of the biggest governing rules. I mean, just like you said, they went as far as to count how many steps a person should walk.
Yeah, right.
And they weren't even allowed to travel like great distances on the Sabbath because there was a certain threshold where they apparently classified it as work.
Right.
Like you can go so far and it doesn't feel like work.
Right.
But you take one more step.
And that's work.
It's like, now it's work, right?
Yeah, you're not allowed to pick up too many sticks to carry in for a fire.
Right.
Right. You're not allowed to start a fire. So you could have a fire, you couldn't start a fire.
So you
on the Sabbath.
So you started at like at 5:59.
Yeah.
On the previous day.
Yeah, or they would take the coals, just like humans have done throughout history. Make a little packet full of coals, That way the fire was still technically going because the coals were fire.
Right.
And you could open that packet back up, and then you can have another fire. As long as you didn't have to do the work of actually setting up the wood. So the wood would be set up, and then all you'd have to do is open the thing up, and then you have another fire, so that you could have, heat the soup that you made yesterday. Because you can't make the soup today, because you're not allowed to chop the vegetables today. But you can lift the pot up onto the fire and heat the soup.
Okay,
and ladle it out, right? They had all these odd rules.
So let's talk about this. So so I grew up in a place that was so rules based that that I didn't have dancing at my wedding. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Did you have dancing?
No. Huh?
Yeah. And so and there's a joke that why do Baptists why are Baptists against premarital sex? Have you ever heard this?
Yeah, because it might lead to dancing.
Because it might lead to dancing.
Yeah.
It's just a funny joke because that's how high it was on the list. Dancing for whatever reason was wrong, right? So Footloose.
Well, there's a lot of vulgar dancing.
Oh, for sure.
But a married couple that's wanting to dance.
There's a lot of vulgar everything.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
Just there's a lot of bad beverages, but we don't get rid of all beverages.
Right.
There's a lot of bad movies, but we don't get rid of all movies.
Right.
There's a lot of bad books, but we don't stop reading all books. Right. But the idea of rules based is something that I just never quite understood. And when I was actually growing up, I actually grew up in an environment where there were actually sort of no rules. So my mom and dad got divorced when I was only 10.
Right.
And then my mom worked 3 jobs. So she was gone, let me think, always.
Right.
Always, right?
So you guys were just feral.
Yeah.
You were feral, running buck wild.
Yeah.
Bunch of boys, all that testosterone in the house with no rules.
So, I did my own laundry at 10 years old. We just sort of packed our own lunches and we went. And now I'm not saying my mom didn't do a good job.
Right.
In fact,
she was doing the best she could do.
I would say she did a great job in terms of doing the best she could do.
Yeah.
And she gave and sacrificed and everything else. But in terms of, growing up, I just felt like there were no rules. So I remember there were times where I would be gone 3 days in the summer, and then I would call home, and my mom didn't know where I was, and she'd say, "Well, I figured you were over Jeff's," and I'd say, "Well, I'm over Jeff's," and it's like, "Well, Chris, I'd appreciate if you called me and didn't wait 72 hours."
Right.
So there were no rules. And then I went to college, and I told you, like, if you went to a single movie, you got expelled.
Yeah, I went to the same kind of school.
But I've heard of my good friend John Burkett. He's an attorney, and he went to Oral Roberts University, and he said that there were actually sidewalks that were painted pink and blue.
And blue, yeah.
Yeah, and so the boys.
One of the schools I went to didn't
sidewalk.
allow men and women to walk outside together. We were never allowed to be outside together unless we had a permit.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be like on a date that they gave you a pass for. And then your chaperone had to be with you. Then you could be outside walking together.
Yeah. So again, this is the somebody who grew up in a sort of a normal culture.
Yeah. So you had no rules, and suddenly you felt like you were put in prison.
Yes. See what I'm saying? Like whereas you had sort of structure, right?
Oh,
You grew up on a farm.
I grew up with those rules in my life already.
Yes.
So I grew up without a TV. We didn't go to movies. We didn't dance before I went to college, right?
Right.
So all the rules when I went to college, it was just an extension of the life I grew up in.
Yeah. By the way, how many people did you have at your wedding?
About 450, 500 people.
Wow. Yeah, that's really big compared to most weddings.
Yeah.
So for some reason, I remember the number 591.
Oh, yeah.
So 600 people show up. Big Italian family, right? And all they really, are looking forward to is
the booze.
is the bar and the dancing,
right
at the reception. And then I remember Liz and I, we actually hired like a guy in a white tuxedo playing on a white piano with like a little top hat or whatever, classical music. People come in, they give their money. And I think back then in 1992, I think we collected like $7,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
Back then, right? Yeah. And everybody walked in and they go, "Where's the dancing? Where's the booze?" We're like, "Oh no, this is a Baptist wedding," and they were like, "What?" And my family was so unbelievably mad. I'm talking like mad.
Right.
Like I heard about it for 10 years. Oh, hey, nice wedding, and I'm like, it was 10 years ago, bro.
Yeah. Yep.
They were pretty mad.
So in this one, there's a difference between no dancing and keep the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Because God put the Sabbath in the 10 Commandments equal to don't have any other gods and don't commit adultery, don't kill.
No, I wasn't referring to that.
Right.
I
No,
was
no, no. But I mean, for them, that's how they were viewing this. It wasn't
Yeah.
just a rule. It was equal to don't commit adultery, don't kill, don't have any other gods.
So what I was referring to is like from that one rule comes the ridiculousness of how many sticks.
Oh, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yep.
So
they made rules on top of the rules on top of the rules.
Yeah. And by the way, there were probably over 100,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. Tons.
And they were sort of ludicrous because you had to fulfill the letter of the law by saying, oh, there's 5 sticks, but you can't pick up 6 sticks because 6 sticks is a sin,
Right.
but 5 is not, right?
Whatever
so
that
that's
was.
what I'm saying. It's just become sort of ludicrous. That sort of sent me down the ludicrous trail.
So there is an interesting thing in Matthew and Luke. It references the story of David.
Yep.
So David's on the run. He's being hunted down. He's about to be killed by Saul, and he goes into the tabernacle, and the priests had these loaves of bread out. They were kind of like an offering to God. David comes in, and they're starving. Like, these guys are starving, and he comes in and gets the bread and eats the bread. And so both Matthew and Luke tell that story.
Right.
And then Jesus ends it by saying, the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath, right? If it's okay for David to eat when his people were hungry and to give his companions the food because they were about to die, it's okay. And by the way, Jesus is saying, and I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I can make this choice too. But it's interesting. Mark does not use that story, but gives the exact same principle. And that is when he says, Mark does give the story.
Actually, all 3 of them give the story.
Yeah. So Mark gives a story, but then he goes on and adds to the story, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. So then the Son of Man is Lord even over the Sabbath. So Mark gives that extra caveat explaining why he uses the story of David. Right? So more important than leaving that bread for the priests as an offering was keeping a human alive. Right? That's what he's saying. David and his men were going to die if they didn't eat. They didn't have the energy. They were going to be overwhelmed by Saul's army, all this kind of stuff. They needed the food. And so it turned out more important than having that loaf of bread in exactly the right spot in the tabernacle today was keeping David alive.
Right.
Right? So the life of the man and his companions was more important than where the bread sat.
Right.
Because that bread was totally consumable outside of that spot.
Right.
So if they'd been in another part of the tabernacle, out in the other court, or if it'd been outside where that bread was made, because the bread wasn't made inside of the tabernacle. So wherever that bread was made, in the transit from the bakery to the tabernacle, totally legit to eat. But because it was sitting on that plate in that spot, nope, you can't touch it. And what Jesus is saying is to keep a human alive is more important than making sure that this symbolic bread sits in the right spot in the tabernacle. So it turns out then what he's saying is the life of the person is more important than the rule. And so the rules are made or this rule, specifically the Sabbath, is made for our benefit. We're not made to just keep reinforcing rules. There are others, though, that don't have that same caveat. For instance, committing adultery. There are no caveats for, okay, well, in this instance, adultery is okay.
Right.
Right? So, in this instance, it's okay to have more than one God. Right? So Jesus does give a little bit of a caveat to say, listen, the other rules are the boundaries. Don't cross those lines or you've crossed into evil. This one, what he's saying is this is a gift from God for your benefit. And so since it's for your benefit, this isn't a rule about you cross outside of it and all of a sudden now you're a heretic. You have 2 gods or 5 gods or 1,000,000 gods. That's not the line. Or you've cheated on your vow to your spouse or you've killed another human. Those are different. Those are boundaries. Don't cross these lines. With regard to the Sabbath, it's a gift to make your life better. Mm-hmm. And this is one of those weird gifts that we tend to throw away and go, I just don't care. I don't care about that gift, God. And I'm just telling you, there's so much research done about the health benefits of a Sabbath, about the ability for you to regenerate and reset. So one of the rules that we've made with our staff, one of the guidelines that we give all the time with our staff is we want our staff to have a 24-hour period where they're not plowing Heritage's field. That doesn't mean we want you to go sit in your lazy boy all day and not do anything to honor, but rather go do something that recharges your batteries and builds you and your family up and draws you closer to God that isn't doing the Heritage Church work.
Yeah. And by the way, another distinction between those two commandments are it's a principle that's not necessarily clearly defined. So, for instance, when they say you shall not commit adultery, right? You shall not steal. We know what it is to steal. It's black and white. We know what it is to commit adultery, black and white. There's no mistaking any of that.
Right.
But when you say honor your father and mother, then that turns into a practice of, well, how? Right.
Yeah.
So that's a principle that's not clearly defined.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of figure out, how do you honor your father and mother as long as you adhere to that principle? Well, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That's another principle that is there, but it's the how part, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to distinguish, like, how. So again, that's why Jesus is saying, the how part wasn't violated when David grabbed the bread. Right. You think it was, but it wasn't, right? Because again, that's why he said, we're made for, the Sabbath is made for us, not us for the Sabbath. So I think that's important to know.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's referring to Deuteronomy chapter 23, Exodus chapter 34, Leviticus 19, 9 through 10. All of those references talk about the harvesting during Sabbath. They talk about the story of David going into the temple, and then also the Sabbath principle itself.
Yeah. So then there is a note for the Mark chapter 2, 25 through 28 that I think is really relevant. It's a great place to end. It says, the Christian faith involves many rules that are meant to be governed by love. That makes love the highest rule, but it also moves Christians towards personal sacrifice, discipline, and responsibility. Scarce resources in today's world, personal sacrifice, discipline, and responsibility are scarce resources in today's world. When confronted with rules of your own or others' making, ask these 4 questions. Does the rule serve God's purposes? Right? Secondly, does the rule reveal God's character? Is it showing us something about God? Third, does the rule help people get into God's family, or does it keep them out? And then fourth, does the rule have biblical roots that can be supported in the context of all Scripture? And good rules can pass all 4 of those tests.
Well, that's really good.
Isn't that really good?
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we recommend the Life Application Study Bible. Is it'll get into, there's a ton of stuff in here that explains so much more about David and so much more about the Sabbath, all the stuff that we didn't read. But there's always an applicational piece to the notes that kind of make you go, okay, so it's not just about the facts or the information. It's also, what do I do with this?
Right.
And this is one of those that gives you really great guidelines on how to sort through, is this a man-made rule, or is this a beneficial rule that God would have me follow?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to end, and we will see you next time on The Bible Guys.